Okay, so my project is on Ansel Adams, who's a very famous American environmental photographer. And something interesting that I was talking with Rebecca about actually was how I was assigned, just a person or artist in general, not necessarily a piece of work. So through my research, I found that just his personal life had a lot to do with his art. I thought that was pretty cool. So this is a photo of him. He lived from 1902 to 1984. He's a cool looking guy. Okay, and so life and background. I was going to start with life and background, go into his career, and then into one of his artworks, photographs. Okay, so he was born in San Francisco in 1902 in California. So from a historical context, you already have sort of an idea of how he was born into kind of this early environmental movement that was prompted mainly by Theodore Roosevelt, who passed various environmental measures that included attempting to rebuild arid spaces in the southwestern United States, which reminded me of Dune a little bit, protection of natural places and spaces like Yosemite, Yellowstone, all those places, and of course the eventual establishment of the National Park Service in 1916, which is interesting because the government shut down and I was trying to do research and I couldn't even get on the website, so that was annoying. But
the first victim of the furlough.
And so yeah, he was both physically and like mentally close to the origins of environmental thinking. Oh, and so something I thought was important from his childhood was that his grandfather and father owned like a lumber company, and they wanted to pass it down to him, but he refused. And I think this is like reflecting sort of his early interest in environmentalism. And he read In the High Sierras by James Mason Hutchings, who was a big promoter of Yosemite. And so that effectively prompted him to convince his family to actually go to Yosemite. And so once he was there, his parents gave him a Kodak Brownie camera. This is what it looks like. And he was allowed to take photos and stuff, and that sort of drove his initial interest in photography. And he would visit Yosemite every year thereafter, first going there. So, not surprisingly thereafter, he developed an interest in photography. And also when he was 17, which that was pretty young, he decided to join the Sierra Club, which works to preserve natural, wonders domestically and internationally. And he was president of it from 1936 to 1970, yeah. So as you can see from his early life, he was very dedicated and invested already in the environment. Okay, and then some stuff from his career. So his first portfolio, and it was kind of his breakthrough, was Parnellian Prints of the High Sierras, and was published in 1927. And it includes his most famous work, Monolith, the Face of the Half Dome. And he worked with the photography business, began getting paid to take photos, so this kind of drove him to do something that he loved, if he would get paid for it. In 1933, he opened his own gallery in San Francisco, and he also educated himself and interfaced a lot with notable artists like Paul Strain and Alfred Stieglitz, and together they helped to make a name for photography as a novel form of art. And something interesting that I thought, connected with Leopold's land ethic of how, in order to create a land ethic, you have to have societal cooperation and respect first, was his photographs of social inequities and social injustices. And this included stuff like the World War II Japanese-American internment camps. These are a couple of photos that he took of those. He wanted to impact not only environmentalism, but social and political thought. Oh, okay, and then this is, I don't know if I'll put the whole thing.
You want to make sure my sound is on as well?
Yeah. Is it on the...
There we go.
This is just a quote from him, kind of his philosophical thought.
Photographer's objective is not the duplication of visual reality. Photography is an investigation of both the outer and the inner worlds. The first experiences with the camera involve looking at the world beyond the lens, trusting the instrument will capture something seen. The terms shoot and take are not accidental. They represent an attitude of conquest and appropriation. Only when the photographer grows into perception and creative impulse does the term make define a condition of empathy between the external and the internal events. Alfred Stieglitz told me, when I make a photograph, I make love. Ansel Adams.
It was just a short clip that I thought was really beautiful in describing his, perception of art. Okay. So this is the monolith of the Half Dome, which was shot April 10th, 1927. So these are some of the details, kind of my close reading interpretation. So it's in his classic black and white style, which kind of gives a nice contrast, I think, and I think personally it enhances the photo because even like if it weren't, in black and white, in color, it would kind of be the same thing, with the snow and then the dark, rich earthy rock. I just think black and white that enhances it. And also something interesting I thought was there's kind of like a visual split, literally like down the middle of this monolith. So it kind of gives a sense of like monumentality and also like depth perception, which he was really known for. He developed a technique called zone systems, which was very into depth perception and clarity. So to the left of the split, you kind of see, the background and what's beyond, and then towards the front, you see, the foreground. There's trees over there. So I thought that was just an interesting tidbit, and it's also very detailed. You can see like every nook and crevice in it, which is pretty amazing for the time it was photographed. So this photo supports the idea of isolation and otherworldliness because you can't see any of the non-mute forms of life, only plants and non-human things. Okay, context, it was made in 1927, and then this is a quote, I won't read it, but I think it gives a good description of one of his concepts that he helped to create, which is called conscious visualization, which is having the photographer construct his own view of the photo in his conscious before he even takes it. So it kind of did away with the idea that the photographers take so many different photos before to get the perfect shot. Like they can just visualize it and then take it. So, but then this kind of brings up the question: is this like less natural if you kind of make it a human construction? And in his lifespan, he lived through both the beginning period, which I told about, of environmental thinking, and also through the 70s. So, the big environmental drive push, and so he kind of went through all the different perspectives with conservation, preservation, and everything in between. So, yeah. And his significance, he looked at the landscape as evanescent and unfixed, which kind of helped people connect with the environment more and see it as just as lively as we are. So, kind of making it more human. And he pioneered a new way of taking photographs called zone systems, which I told you about. And he established photography into environmental and aesthetic discourse, which was very important for inspiring later generations of photographers of places like Yosemite and Yellowstone and other national parks. So, and these are some more of his photographs. They're really pretty. These are just some of the questions. They don't necessarily have an answer, but just what I was thinking. Do photographs and other visual representations of a place do it justice? What are the aesthetic benefits of photography? And also, because most of his photos are in black and white, and I thought that was just interesting. Does it make the environment less natural? Does it distract from or enhance the beauty that is already there? And I think Instagram #filter, because I thought it kind of related to that. And it's just a little pop culture relation to this. So, yeah, do you guys have any thoughts about it or any questions? Answer them or no?
What's your favorite photograph of theirs?
I just like the monolith and the Half Dome mainly. There's like a lot of other ones that are cool, but that was my favorite. And also like the World War II internment camp ones. There was some that he did of just like the people in internment camps where they looked happy, and that was an interesting contrast of what they were really going through versus what they all did in the photos. So, yeah.
I think that you ask a really interesting question when you ask how would our perception of our experience of artwork change if it was in a different medium.
Yeah.
Because in some ways we've seen that, right, with the Hudson River School. There are a lot of similarities, not just in the subject matter, but in the style, right? These massive landscapes with depth. I mean, the same words are being used. So maybe that might be a good point of sort of getting us all to respond to these really great discussion questions, is using that specific comparison, right? What does Ansel Adams photograph? What if Ansel Adams photographs do that's different from what the Hudson River School paintings of this stuff did? Do you guys have a different reaction to it?
realistic. Like they show more detail. I mean, not paintings, pictures.
Yeah, that's a bold claim.
Like when people paint, like they don't really. It's not like really accurate. It's not like what's really there. It's kind of like take notes of what's in the landscape and then like on their own time paint like their personal perception of what was there, not necessarily what is physically present.
I agree with that, but I also think that in photography, it's less noticeable, but the, photographer can definitely implement his own perception of it based on what he actually takes the photo of, like the perspective of it, so, but I agree with you. Yeah.
The perfect example would be like those New York housing pictures. It looks so much bigger than it actually is. And it's like that's the beauty of photography right there.
Yeah.
But you raised an interesting point, True, though, where it feels more real, right? Even though we correctly, as Hannah correctly does, say like, no, photography is also framed and strategic, and Ansel Adams' like incredible talent for manipulation and framing proves that. But it feels more real, right?
Yeah, I took a photography class during the summer taking black and white photos. So like there are tons of like little tricks you can use or whatever, like framing, like burning it to like darken more areas, adding filters. You can like really like change the image, but at the end of the day, like everything that's present in the image that you can see was like physically present in the real world versus paintings. It's like you have to take it with a grain of salt. Like, was that even really there? Does it really look like that? It's just more realistic.
Yeah.
I think that's a great job. Let's give a round of applause for their presentation. Well done.